Before you settle in, I need you to understand something. The stories I'm about to tell you, I didn't share them online looking for help. I didn't want attention or validation. I'm telling them now because I realized something worse than what happened to me. Most of you have no idea it's already happening to you, and you just haven't noticed yet. These aren't stories about monsters. They're about the person you see every single day, the one you trust because they seem normal. By the time you understand what's really happening, they already know your schedule. They already know when you're alone, and they've already decided something about you. So stay with me, because after hearing these, you'll understand why I check my locks 8 times before bed, why I never open my blinds at night, and why I watch the people around me completely differently now. Before we go further, make sure you hit the subscribe button and tell me where you're watching from in the comment section. Let's get into it. I work from home, which means I'm the one who usually answers for packages. It never seemed weird before. You get deliveries, you sign, life goes on. But last year something changed, and I only realized how long it had been happening when I reviewed my own security footage. It started small. A delivery driver who came to my building more than once a week. Nothing unusual about that. People order things, but I started noticing he always found a reason to linger. He'd deliver a package to my neighbor, then somehow need to use the bathroom. He'd arrive early and wait in the lobby. Now, once I saw him standing in the hallway looking at the mailboxes for 10 minutes before finally heading to a delivery. I didn't think much of it until one day he arrived when I wasn't expecting anything. No package in his hand, no delivery sheet. He knocked anyway. When I opened the door, he smiled, said he must have gotten his deliveries mixed up, and left. But his truck wasn't outside. I watched him walk down the hallway and knock on another door 3 down from mine. That's when I checked my security footage from the past 2 months. What I found made my blood feel thin and cold. He came to my door 17 times. 17. Most of those times, I wasn't home. But the camera caught him, not just dropping off packages, but standing in front of my door, looking at it. Once, I watched him lean against the frame and just stare at it for 40 seconds before leaving. Another time, he held a package up to the camera as if he was examining my exact door number, the height, the lock mechanism. The footage showed a pattern. Every Tuesday and Friday, days I told him I worked from home, when I'd answer the door. Every other Wednesday, days he knew I went to my office. When my door stayed closed, he had learned my schedule better than I had. I watched him in that footage, and I realized the worst part. He was being patient, methodical. This wasn't a moment of impulse. This was planning. He was conducting what looked like reconnaissance. My chest tight as I tried to remember every interaction with him. Every time I'd answered the door in just a t-shirt. Every time I'd called out my name when I heard the knock. And every time I'd mentioned where I worked. The next time he came, I recorded our interaction on my phone, hidden behind my back. I told him I'd be home all week. He smiled, and I caught something in that smile. Relief, like a question had been answered. I reported him, gave the footage to the police, played them the recording. They found something worse in his own truck, screenshots of my building's directory. My name highlighted, my unit number circled, dates written underneath, the days he'd watched my door. They arrested him. It made the local news for one day. Delivery driver arrested for stalking. Nobody mentioned the fact that he had 17 opportunities to do something much worse. That I answered that door 17 times. That the only thing stopping him was something I still don't understand. When I think about what he was planning, whether it was robbery or something else, I think about that moment he smiled. That moment he realized I'd given him exactly what he needed. My schedule, my routine, my vulnerability. Now, every delivery that comes to my door, I check the security footage first. I watch the driver's face. I see if they linger. I've become the person who studies how long a stranger stands outside my home, and I hate that I have to be. The worst part is simple. He was right. He learned my schedule better than anyone should ever know it. I'm a photographer, or I was. Now I'm just someone who looks at pictures and feels sick. I take wedding photos, corporate events, that kind of work. It pays well enough, and I have complete control over my schedule. About 8 months ago, I noticed something strange in my photos. Not in the professional shots I took for clients. In my own test photos, the ones I took in my apartment. I'd set up lighting rigs, test exposures, work with my camera for hours. When I imported the photos to edit them later, I started seeing reflections I didn't remember creating. In the windows behind my setup, in the polished metal reflector, in the glass of my cabinet doors. At first, I thought it was just me not remembering what was in the frame. Happens to photographers all the time. You focus on composition and miss background elements. But then I started looking closer. In the reflection of a light fixture, there was a shape in my bedroom doorway. In the window's reflection, a figure standing in my kitchen. Always partial, always just the edge of someone. Never enough to identify. Just enough to know they were there. And I went back through 8 months of photos. Photo after photo, different angles, same figure. Always in a position that a normal visitor wouldn't stand. Not on the couch, not at the kitchen counter, in corners, in doorways, waiting. It took me 3 days to accept what I was looking at. Someone had been in my apartment, repeatedly, standing in my home while I set up a camera pointed at myself, unaware they were there, getting their photo taken without them being the subject. I think the point was to prove they could be. I reported it to the police, brought the photos. They brought a detective who stared at the reflections for a long time, then told me it was hard to confirm anything from them. The reflections were too unclear. Could be anyone. Could be shadows. He asked if my door had been forced. No. Windows broken. No. Missing items. No. So technically, nothing had happened. No burglary, no violence. No crime they could actually prove. But someone had been inside my apartment, standing quietly while I worked. Someone had let me be close enough to photograph them, even if I didn't know I was doing it. And the message seemed clear. You're not as aware of your surroundings as you think you are. I moved 3 months later, but I kept the photos. I look at them sometimes and try to see the face. Try to understand if it was someone I know, someone I've seen before. But the reflections are too blurred, too partial, and that's what makes me sick. Because the blurred quality means they were calculated that way. Far enough from the camera, hidden enough to never be identified. Just close enough to prove they were there. I haven't taken a single photo in my home since. When I look through my camera now, all I can think about is what else might be in the background. What I'm missing while I focus on the subject. And somewhere out there, someone has photos too. Photos they took of me, from an angle I never knew existed. And I'll never see them. I'll never know what they captured. My apartment building had a gym in the basement. Small place, just a few treadmills and weight machines. There were showers down there for people who came in after work. I used them maybe twice a month. One evening, I went down around 9 p.m., essentially had the place to myself. Used the equipment for 40 minutes, grabbed my gym bag, and headed to the showers. The shower stall doors were wood, and they went almost to the floor, but not quite. Maybe an inch gap at the bottom. Standard cheap construction. When I hung my bag on the hook, stripped down, and started washing. The water was hot, and I remember closing my eyes, just enjoying the heat. I was in there maybe 5 minutes when I noticed something. A shadow. Under the shower door, in the gap at the bottom. At first, I thought someone was waiting for the shower next to mine, so I didn't panic. I finished washing quickly, though, and shut off the water. The shadow was still there. I pulled the door open. The gym was empty. The shower next to mine had no one in it. But someone had been standing right outside my stall, feet inches from the door, watching the silhouette of my body through the frosted wood. They had moved. I could see the wet footprints leading away toward the stairs. The prints were bare feet, large. They hadn't bothered to put shoes on. I got dressed in 60 seconds. I grabbed my bag and just walked out. I didn't report it. I didn't tell anyone. I was too embarrassed and I was too scared. But here's what messed with my head. I checked the security footage later. There was no camera in the shower area, gym liability issue. But there were cameras pointed at the entrance to the gym. I watched the footage. I saw myself go in. Then, 3 minutes later, I saw a man come in behind me. He didn't use any equipment. He didn't change into gym clothes. He just walked directly to the shower area. 17 minutes later, I came out. He came out 4 minutes after that. I ran the footage back, watched it over and over. I tried to make out his face, but the gym lighting was too dim. The angle was wrong. I could see he had dark hair, a white shirt, jeans. I could see he walked with a specific gait. I could see his hands, but I couldn't see his face. That's what I remember most clearly. The feeling that I was looking at someone I should recognize, that he was familiar in some way, that maybe I passed him in the hallway. Maybe he lived in my building. Maybe I'd seen him at the coffee place I go to. Maybe he was someone I should know. The police brought in the footage when I finally reported it. They enhanced it as much as they could. The detective told me it looked like someone they'd had reports about, someone who'd been using various gym facilities around the city. Dressing room stalker is what he called it. Never approached anyone, never touched anyone, just watched. They never caught him. I canceled my gym membership that same week. But for months afterward, I'd go to a shower in my apartment and I'd remember that shadow under the door. And I'd wonder where he was, what he was doing. If he was standing outside someone else's shower right now, feet bare on cold concrete, just watching through the gap at the bottom. And the worst part was realizing he had chosen me that night. He could have followed anyone into that gym, but he chose the shower I was using, which meant he'd been watching before he came in. He'd seen me walk down into the basement. He'd planned on being there. The 17 minutes he was in the gym weren't an accident. He was there because of me. I inherited my uncle's house. He'd passed away, and I had no other family who wanted it. It was a ranch-style place, built in 1987, in a neighborhood that had gone quiet over the years. The most houses on the street had either been sold to investors or sat empty. Mine was one of the few with someone actually living there. My first few months, I was just getting the place functional, cleaning, fixing things, trying to make it feel like my home and not like a mausoleum filled with my uncle's old things. The attic was one of the last places I got to. I kept putting it off because old houses creep me out, and attics especially make my skin crawl. But eventually, I had to go up there to get boxes down. The attic access was in the hallway ceiling, a pull-down ladder. The attic itself was mostly empty. My uncle had cleaned it out at some point, just left some old luggage and some plastic bins. Bare wooden beams, insulation, and dust everywhere. The dust was thick, like years of it settling undisturbed. That's why I saw them immediately. Footprints. Walking across the attic floor. Starting at the ladder I'd just climbed up, walking toward the far corner of the attic, then back toward the ladder again. But I was the only one who'd been up there. This was only my 4th time in the house. I stood there staring at the footprints, my breath coming short. They were fresh, not weeks old. days old, maybe hours. The prints were clear in the dust, someone wearing what looked like sneakers or shoes with good tread. The footprints went to the corner where the attic got really tight, where the roof sloped down. They stopped at a spot that was just barely visible from the ladder. There was a clear spot in the dust there, like someone had brushed it away. And when I looked closer, I saw what they'd been looking at. A sight line. A clear view down through a gap in the ceiling boards directly into my master bedroom. I got down from that attic in seconds. I didn't walk. I basically fell down the ladder. I called the police. They came out, checked the attic, confirmed the footprints. They were confused by them. Said it looked like someone had been in the attic multiple times. They found a spot where the insulation had been disturbed, like someone had been sitting there for extended periods. The detective asked if I'd noticed anything unusual, any sounds from above, any sense that someone was watching. And I realized I had. The first week, I'd heard creaking in the ceiling. I'd assumed it was the house settling. I'd heard it in the evenings, around 10 p.m., and I'd heard it again late at night, around 2 a.m. Someone had been in my attic above my bedroom, watching through a gap in the ceiling, visiting multiple times, knowing my schedule by the sounds I made below them. They never caught anyone. The detective said it could be a neighbor, could be someone who knows the house is mostly empty most of the day. Could be someone who'd been using the attic as a shortcut from yard to yard. But we both knew that was a lie. No one walks across attic joists watching someone's bedroom through a ceiling gap by accident. I got the attic sealed. I got cameras installed. But I never felt right in that house again. Because someone had already been there, in the space above me while I slept, watching me the way people watch animals at a zoo, behind glass, invisible, in control. I sold the house 6 months later. I haven't bought another house since. I live in an apartment on the ground floor. No attic above me, no access from anywhere but the main entrance. But sometimes at night, I'll hear a sound in my ceiling, just the building settling, and my heart will start racing. And I'll look up at the solid white ceiling and wonder if there's someone above it, watching the empty space where I just was, waiting for me to come back. I had a therapist, Dr. Reeves. I'd been seeing her for 3 years, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. She specialized in anxiety and had helped me work through a lot. She knew my schedule, my habits, my vulnerabilities. She knew things about me that I hadn't even told my closest friends. Then she took a vacation, 2 weeks in the summer. She had a replacement therapist cover her practice. Younger woman, maybe mid-30s, soft-spoken. She seemed nice. I didn't think much about it. But something felt off about the replacement. She knew things, specific things. Not just the general themes Dr. Reeves had written in notes, but details. Personal details about my family members' names, about where I worked, about specific conversations I'd had weeks ago that weren't in any summary of my case. I asked her how she knew those things. She said Dr. Reeves must have left detailed notes. But when I asked Dr. Reeves about it later, she seemed confused. She said she kept clinical notes, but nothing that specific, nothing that personal. I started paying attention to other things. The replacement therapist's office was arranged differently. There was a second door I'd never noticed before, one that wasn't in my view, that went somewhere in the back. During sessions, I'd sometimes hear sounds from that back room, movement, like someone was there listening. I asked about it. The replacement said it was just storage. But one day I came early to my appointment and I tried the back door. It was locked, but I could see through the frosted glass. There was a desk in there, a computer, and taped to the wall behind the desk were photographs. They were blown-up photos of the therapy office, taken from inside the office, pointing toward the patient's chair, pointing toward me, in other words. I walked out without my appointment. I never went back. When I finally told Dr. Reeves what I'd seen, she was stunned. She said the replacement had been thoroughly vetted, background checked, licensed. But she agreed to look into it. When she did, she found something buried in the replacement's employment application, a previous job she hadn't disclosed. She'd been fired from a clinic for boundary violations with patients. No specifics. But the clinic had refused to give more details when Dr. Reeves called. The replacement had moved to the next state and gotten licensed there. And somehow she'd ended up covering Dr. Reeves's practice. What terrified me wasn't that she'd taken photos. It was realizing how much information she had about me. How many weeks she could have been recording sessions. How many times she'd heard me talk about being alone, about my anxieties, about the times I was most vulnerable. And I realized something worse. If she could get into that profession, how many other therapists, doctors, counselors had done the same thing? How many people were sitting in private offices telling their biggest secrets to people who had cameras hidden, or recording devices running, or rooms in the back where someone was taking notes for a different purpose? The idea that the person you trust with your mental health might be collecting information about you, not for your healing, but for something else. It fundamentally broke something in how I see people in positions of trust. I don't go to therapy anymore. I can't. Because every time I'd sit across from someone new, I'd look for the second door, I'd look for the camera. I'd wonder if they were vetting me the way that replacement had vetted me. And the worst part is knowing that Dr. Reeves never found out what the replacement was planning. We never knew if the photos were meant to stalk, to blackmail, to remember. We never knew because she was never caught doing anything that could be legally proven. She just had the photos. She had the information. And she knew exactly where to find me if she ever needed to. 5 stories. 5 times the system failed. 5 times no one was stopped in time to prevent the setup, the watching, the preparation. 5 times the person told their story and realized that the most dangerous part was the gap between something feels wrong and I can prove it with evidence. Because that's the real fear, isn't it? Not the moment you discover someone's been watching. It's the months before that. When you felt it. When something crawled on your skin. When you knew something was off. And everyone told you that you were paranoid, that you were overreacting, that there was no proof. Until the proof was too late. So here's what I want you to understand. Trust that feeling. The one that makes your skin crawl. The one that makes you glance over your shoulder. The one that makes you check your locks even though you just checked them. That feeling isn't paranoia. It's recognition. On some level, someone is studying you. Someone is learning your patterns. Someone is waiting for the moment you're vulnerable enough. The question is, will you notice in time? Because by the time you see the footprints in the dust, they've already been in your attic. By the time you find the photos, they've already been watching through the camera. By the time you realize what the replacement was, she already knows where you live. The proximity violations don't start when they act. They start when they're already there. And the person standing closest to you in a room right now, you don't know their story yet, but they know yours. Good night.